Welcome to the Human Resources Payroll Town Hall for ConnectCarolina. I'm Matt Brody, the Associate Vice Chancellor for Human Resources, and I chair the HR Payroll ConnectCarolina Stakeholder Group. We've got a lot of updates for you this morning on the HR Payroll project, and we're going to get right into it because we don't have a large amount of time. I will mention, though, in addition to those attending today, we have between 45 and 50 folks already joining us by webinar, because we are streaming this by webinar. So if you decide to get up and ask a question, make sure you're ready to be famous on the web, because you will be streamed as well. All right, so let me start just by giving you a quick tour of what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to be doing sort of a high-level update on a number of topics dealing with the HR Payroll project. Then I'm going to turn it over to Anita Collins from ITS, who's going to talk a lot about the training effort that's going to accompany the launch of the HR Payroll portion of ConnectCarolina. And as I think you'll appreciate once you see her presentation, there's a lot of time and effort going into the training in addition to the configuration and development of the software. I'd say the centerpiece, though, of today's presentation are demos. One of the pieces of feedback that we've gotten from prior town hall and other venues where we've discussed this is that we really want to see more of this. We've not been hiding it from you. It's just that the fact is it takes a long time to configure and in certain pieces develop parts of the system, so we haven't always been in a position to show you actual screens. But we are today. Some of it is a work in progress, although pretty far along as a work in progress. So not everything may be 100% as it will exist on January 2014, but I think you'll see a fairly true representation of the way pieces of the system are going to work. And Vicki Bradley from OHR is going to demo some forms and workflow. Rich Arnold is going to do the training enrollment piece, which Oracle calls ELM, Enterprise Learning Management. It's basically the piece where employees enroll for employee training classes at the university. And then finally, because Rich just is so good at all this, he's going to also do a demo of reporting. And then I'm going to come back up, and any of us will take any questions that you have, and questions will be at the mic so that you show up. Folks on the stream can hear you as well. So that's our ambitious agenda for today. Let me start by talking about the major pieces of work that are going on with HR Payroll. One of the items that we're working on are to-be processes, and some of this is kind of behind-the-scenes work that our business analysts and business owners in HR and payroll are focused on, and this is really determining how our forms, our policies, and our procedures are going to be impacted by PeopleSoft, because PeopleSoft works very differently than EPA Web and HRIS and some of the other, and payroll, the green screen payroll system you use. So there's a lot of things that we've got to change on our websites, on our forms, different terminology. That's all encapsulated in this to-be process work, and that is now underway, and that's actually a fairly heavy lift, so that in January 2014, when you go to our various websites and forms and procedures, it speaks in the way PeopleSoft will do business and not some of the systems that we fondly work with now. And I'm actually pretty fond of EPA Web. I will miss that one, but it's all going to change. Another area that's receiving a lot of attention on the HR Payroll side are forms and workflow. And the PeopleSoft core product that we purchased, there are different modules, finance being one and HR being another, and there are sub-modules within those. The HR product does not have a lot of built-in workflow, and by workflow I mean the process by which someone down in a unit or department goes in and enters a form, and then it knows intelligently to route perhaps to a manager, maybe a budget person and an HR person within the department, and then it has the intelligence to know if it has to go up to a particular school or multiple schools or divisions because funding sources are different, or maybe they're secondary appointments. PeopleSoft just did not have the robustness from the workflow standpoint that our requirements dictated. So we did identify a third-party product called Gideon Taylor. It's basically an electronics form solution that works seamlessly with PeopleSoft, and that's really the piece of the product on the HR side that you guys are going to be interacting with. So we're under contract with PeopleSoft. We have their consultants on the ground working side by side with us, and we're in the process of really implementing in this platform all of the forms that you guys will use to enter HR actions, and that's what Vicki is going to be demonstrating to you as well. We did take the opportunity going to PeopleSoft to review all of the current workflows, basically what action requires what approval and by whom. We have made some changes there, some attempts to try to streamline some of our approval processes, also to try to improve things that maybe didn't work as well in our current legacy systems. We do have the HR stakeholder group, which is composed of representatives from a number of schools and divisions as well as central offices, and we have vetted all of the different workflow decisions through that group. Not everyone will love every particular decision that we've made with workflow. I don't think that's the case even in our current systems, but we haven't made this in a vacuum. We've engaged a lot of people in the discussion about how that will work. And again, Vicki is going to demonstrate that to you a little later today. Another area that is especially complicated and that is taking a lot of time and effort is what's called a commitment accounting in PeopleSoft. And that's basically how the system takes payroll and benefits expenditures and pushes them out into the financial systems, both for budget checking and ultimately so they show up on your financial statements in the right account code and budget code and so forth. That's really the touch point between the HR payroll module of PeopleSoft and all of the finance and general ledger pieces. Very, very complicated, and this requires effort, very close effort and coordination by the people who are working on the HR side of the project and the people who are working on the finance side of the project. So that in itself means we really have to pay careful attention to make sure the HR folks get what they need and the accountants and financial people get what they need. And so we're spending a lot of time on that, and I think we're making some very good headway to make sure that will work well on our go live. Configuration, basically PeopleSoft is a vendor product, but there are literally hundreds, thousands of little switches that you can throw to say something in PeopleSoft will work this way or that way. Much of it is not custom programming. I got somebody's connecting. Okay, there we go. I guess that's number 46 logging into the webinar. Hopefully if they type comments that will become visible as well. But anyhow, we are in the process of doing all that configuration work, and it is very complicated and very detailed. It's taking a number of months as it would in any PeopleSoft implementation. A lot of the way we're configuring this is based on requirements that were collected from campus representatives throughout the university, from a number of central office users, and from things that we've brought to our campus working groups. We've got about 200 folks from campus involved in that, as well as our stakeholder committee, which is 35 to 40 folks, give or take. So, we are in configuring the system, but we're not kind of just making decisions on the fly. These are things that we've discussed over, quite honestly, several years, more years than I care to count in terms of how long this project's been going, and we're now implementing many of those decisions. Another big part of the project on the HR side, and actually on the finance as well, is converting our existing legacy data. We have many years of HR data in the HR data warehouse, in the payroll system, as well as in HRIS and EPA web. And we do need the ability, as of day one in PeopleSoft, to know basically when everyone was hired and their hire information, where everyone stood as of the date PeopleSoft went live, so the system is able to pick up seamlessly and process personnel actions from that point forward. So we have to convert data into PeopleSoft. We also have a lot of data that we need to convert into the data warehouse so that when you're working in PeopleSoft and you need to quickly know what person's raises they've gotten over the last 5 years or when they were reclassified, even though all these legacy systems will no longer be in place, that you'll have a way to get to that information. So we're really converting hundreds of thousands of rows of data from our legacy systems. Very complicated, making very, very good progress along these lines. In fact, that part of the project has really is doing quite well right now. But that's a necessity to go live in PeopleSoft. And finally, while we're doing all the configuration and while we're doing all the conversions, we're in constant successive cycles of testing. We're right now engaged in what the IT people call functional unit testing, where we test individual pieces of the system as we configure them or as we create them. But eventually this sort of testing expands out and it really becomes system and integration testing, which is not just testing the individual pieces, but once they all connect up to each other and transactions run from one side of the system to the other, spit out in a payroll check, get posted to the general ledger as a payroll expenditure, is all of that working end to end. And so our testing effort has been underway a number of months as we're completing pieces and is really now getting more into the system-wide testing. That will continue all the way through November. So the testing effort, and probably even early December, the testing effort really doesn't end until we flip the switch and go live. In this chart, I'm not going to go through all the details here, but this chart just illustrates the successive cycles of testing, and there are lots of different pieces of it in each component. As the developers, as the business analysts complete pieces of work, they all go into the testing cycle, and then more and more is tested as an entire system. Continuing in the testing theme, one of the things we're also going to be testing is not just whether the system functions correctly in terms of our individual requirements, but also performance and load testing, which means if 500 people are hitting the enter key at any given time, you know, is this going to look like molasses dripping from a bottle, or are things going to move along, you know, at a pace that you're going to be looking for as a user of the system? And there are some tools that have been acquired to simulate hundreds and hundreds of users on the system doing the same things at once to make sure all the hardware and the infrastructure in the background is doing what it's supposed to do. There will also be testing in terms of data that is needed by some of the departments and centers that have departmental systems that have to pull data from the PeopleSoft system to make departmental systems work. So there's got to be testing in that area. One of the most important pieces of testing that I'm interested in is parallel payroll testing, which is comparing sort of how a check would be produced and benefits would be expressed out of our current payroll system and how it will work in PeopleSoft once we've simulated transactions going through the system. And I'm sure you all agree of all the testing, this is the one we want to make sure goes the best, because I would like my paycheck to be accurate at the end of each month, and I want all my benefits. And so we'll make sure this is the most rigorous of the testing we do. Plus, for those of you who know Betsy Snipes, our payroll director, she's promised if the testing doesn't go well, I probably won't be getting a check. But I take her threat quite seriously. Anyway, bottom line, not to belabor it, there's a whole lot of testing that we're already doing and that is going to continue. Everything has to be thoroughly tested, and Kathy Bryan is giving me this waving thing that I'm not talking fast enough. So I'm going to talk even faster. I'm going to slip through that slide. All right, PeopleSoft Portal Go Live. There is going to be something called the PeopleSoft Portal. It's kind of the menu of menus for PeopleSoft, whether you're a Campus Solutions user, the student system, finance, or HR. You will go to a main web page, this portal, and be able to access all the pieces of the system that you're authorized to do. It's going to go live for Campus Solutions in August, and it'll use your Onion sign-on. And they threw this slide up here, which actually is bigger than I thought it was. This is actually a representation of what the portal will look like. And then when you log in, if you're an HR user, it'll show all the things you're authorized for in HR, finance, the student system. If you have pieces of all three, your menu will be customized to represent all the different pieces that you would need access to. I have been asked to tell you rapidly now that there is a project website, ccinfo.unc.edu. It has a clock on it down to the second that tells how long we have until we go live, which people like Rich Arnold and Vicki probably look at quite often. When is this going to be over? But more importantly, it has links to webinars, project documents, timelines. So for those of you who have a little bit more detailed interest or want to share information with some of your colleagues, in addition to you telling them what a fantastic job that we did today at this town hall, to be seen when we're done, you can certainly forward them a link to this website, and it has a plethora of information that will be useful for you. There's also an email, so if something comes up today that's a question that's not answered, or you have another question later on that occurs, you're welcome to send an email to ConnectCarolina@unc.edu, and the friendly folks in ITS on behalf of the project team will be glad to respond to you. And that is a picture of the website as well, the Connect Carolina website, and there's the little clock, although unfortunately, although we wish it were frozen in time, the clock still ticks, so it's no longer 197 days, 16 hours, 15 minutes, and 4 seconds. Okay, off-campus access. Right now, we do have limitations in place on the HR side where some systems should not and cannot be accessed off-campus, although some of you with remote access, I hear, occasionally slip around that. The reality is, since we've gone live with EPA Web, we realize lots of people have a legitimate need to do some HR business off campus. Connect Carolina will support off-campus access, but only through the Virtual Private Network Connection, or VPN. They have significantly expanded the VPN architecture here, so it will accommodate many more users. It will enable you to work securely and access those systems through VPN. The exception will be self-service items, like employees looking at their pay stubs, some other self-service items for employees as a whole that will not require VPN. This will go live in August for Campus Solutions faculty staff users. They will be required to go through VPN, and you'll get more information on installing and using VPN for those of you who don't before the go live. Finally, we got 3 demos today. We are using test systems. It's not the real thing, so there's a few things that might not look the same. We also do have a webinar on PeopleSoft 101 that kind of gives you the look and feel of PeopleSoft, which might be helpful to add to what you're going to see today. We are webcasting, as I said, so we ask you to please use the microphone in the middle when asking your questions. And with that, much to your relief, I will now invite Anita Collins, who is the change management lead on the project in Connect Carolina, to come up and talk about training. I'm going to give you the mic.
Okay. Hi, everyone. As Matt said, I'm Anita Collins, and my role on the project is change management. So change management is kind of a vague term to a lot of people, but a big part of my role is to identify who needs training, what they need to know, and how we're going to get that training to them. So that's actually been working with the training team to answer those questions for well over a year now, actually, and I want to share some of that with you today, some of what we've come up with. So I want to answer the questions who, what, when, and where of training. So let's start with one of the big ones. Who needs training? So we discovered that approximately 5,000 people need training. That's both on the HR and payroll side and on the finance side. That's a big number. That's a sizable training effort for us. So it's allowed the trainers to be creative about how we're going to approach this. So we're going to approach it in a variety of ways. We are firming up those numbers now, but we do think we're right at about that 5,000 people who need training. The other big who question is who's going to teach these classes? Who's going to deliver this training? So focusing on the HR payroll side, most of the training will be delivered by the change management team and subject matter experts. So by change management team, I am including the trainers from the Office of Human Resources. So it's like a broad definition, but we'll be delivering those classes. But we spent about February and March of this year, we spent a big effort identifying some people from campus who are going to help us make sure that that training is effective. And so we call those people training and implementation partners. And if you try to say that 10 times fast, you'll give up pretty quickly. So we call them TIPs. So you'll hear the term TIPs from now through the end of the project. And what the TIPs are they're people who are familiar with how HR processes work in their area. So they're going to help us make sure we have the right people in classes. They're also going to participate in our classes. So they're going to be in the classes and act as a translator. So our change management team and our subject matter experts will teach based on how UNC is going to do a particular process, and then the tip will be able to say, okay, and then here are the nuances for our area, so they can kind of translate to your specific area. Some training will also be taught, take at your own pace. So I know many of you have probably taken computer-based training by now. It's getting pretty popular out there. So this is training that you can literally take in the middle of the night if you have insomnia. You can take it on your lunch hour. Anytime that's convenient to you, it will be available for you. But don't worry, we're not going to make you sit by yourself in a room in front of a computer for a couple of days. This is for small pieces of content. Usually it's half an hour, 45 minutes. So it's content that usually a lot of people need to know, and it's not too long. And then even we break it into smaller chunks so that you can take the class in 5 minute, 10-minute increments. So on the finance side, we are also using a train-the-trainer model. So we have identified trainers, but for HR and payroll, the project team and subject matter experts will deliver the training. Okay, so I also want to tell you a little bit about what the training will be like. I can't give you a lot of detail today because it would take too long, and we'd have to dedicate the town hall to training, which I don't think anybody wants to do. But I can give you a general idea of what the training will be like. For one thing, it's going to be close to go live. Now, we could design the best class ever and teach it in October, and if you didn't touch the system again until January, you'd forget everything that you learned, even with the best class ever. So one of the key concepts behind training is that it has to be pretty close to when you need to use it. So we will deliver it close to go live. But at the same time, I know many of you would probably like to get in the system today if you could. So we don't want to wait until December, or certainly not January, to let you see the system. So that's why we're doing demos at the town hall today, so you can start seeing the system and get your head around what PeopleSoft is like and what it's all about. And by the time you reach training, it won't be the first time that you've actually seen PeopleSoft. The training will also be targeted to what you need to do in the system. So if speed were our primary goal, we could pack everybody into a room and just start talking about PeopleSoft. But we all know that wouldn't be very good training, and it wouldn't be very effective. So we are not doing one-size-fits-all training. Like I mentioned, we spend a long time identifying everybody who needs training and what they need to know. So training will be targeted to each role. We're going to focus on what you do need to know. The training will also be taught in groups by school and division. So we're going to, instead of having kind of just open enrollment where you can just pick whatever session you want to attend, it helps to take training with people who do things similarly to you, so you don't get those off-the-ball questions that kind of confuse the issue. So we are grouping people by their school and division. And that also allows us to have the training and implementation partners, or TIPs, in the room as we're teaching to give that better experience. The training will also be hands-on when possible. So hands-on training is actually just one of the best ways to help you remember what you've learned. So if you can actually get in the system and do things, you're much more likely to remember what you've learned in class. It will be a training system, so it's a safety thing, right? We're not going to put you into live PeopleSoft and set you loose until you're ready. So we'll have a copy of the real system to use in training. Training will also be required for access to the system. And this is just a good policy in general to make the go live go smoothly for everyone. So it's just best if you've had some training before you actually go into the live system. So training is required to get access to the system. Okay, so that's our what. Let's talk a little bit about when. So we know that go live is in January of next year. And it's right during the holidays, right? So we would love to have a schedule out there, but it is a big effort to put together the training schedule. So we're hard at work at it now, and we're going to publish it towards the end of July. We'll put out the actual training schedule of here's when your classes are. But in the meantime, because you're probably already starting to think about what you're going to do at the end of the year, I can give you a little bit of information. Our classroom training will start in October, but really that's just for very small select groups. So for most people, they won't see the classroom until more like November through January. So the bulk of our training is November through January. And that doesn't mean that you'll all, if you're attending class, you don't all have to be in the whole time, but that's the effort for the training team. Okay. I can also tell you when we won't be training, because that's a little bit easier question to answer. We're not training the week of Thanksgiving, and we're not training December 23rd through January 1st. So if you looked at our holiday schedule this year, we're like in for a day, off for a day, in for a day, off for a day, which really is not conducive to training anyway, so we can be nice and not teach classes during that time period. So a little bit of information for planning your time off. Okay, so one last question. So where will the training be held? I think many of you have probably seen the Center for School Leadership Development. But if not, it's a really beautiful facility. It's across the parking lot from the Friday Center. It's really set up very nicely for computer training, has lots of outlets and good connectivity and all those things that are important to training developers. Plenty of free parking. It's easy to get to. The bus runs there. There's an express bus between there and campus, so it's just easy to get to. It's a really nice facility. And we're actually, during the peak of training, we're taking the place over. So we're taking over every room in the place during the peak of the training. Okay, so that's kind of the brief introduction to how training is going to go for the project. do any of you have questions I can answer? No? You can stay seated. Okay, so I will be hanging out a little bit after if anyone has any questions. But otherwise, I'm going to turn it over now to Vicki Bradley.
And Vicki, I apologize that you're having a little problem with the webinar. We're going to take a second here to try to fix the webinar problem that we're having. Forgive us.
So this will be the part where Vicki and I tap dance, but thank you.
There we go.
You see it?
See the desktop? Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay, good morning everybody. I'm Vicki Bradley. I'm a Senior Director in Human Resources and I'm working full-time on the project. And I wanted to talk with you a little bit today about forms and workflow. As Matt mentioned, we have begun working with a vendor called Gideon Taylor to help us with our forms and our workflow, a third-party software vendor. Gideon Taylor is designs forms that work with PeopleSoft. It uses the same coding that PeopleSoft uses. So actually when you're in a Gideon Taylor form, you won't even know that you're in a Gideon Taylor form. It'll feel like you're right in PeopleSoft. A lot of higher ed clients use Gideon Taylor as the front end into PeopleSoft, and we've listed several of them in front of you so you can see. We've actually talked with several of these universities before we decided to use Gideon Taylor and got some really glowing recommendations about how great it is to have the additional features that Gideon Taylor offers. So Matt had talked a little bit about why we ended up using Gideon Taylor, and really the bottom line is we have a whole lot of requirements at the university about how workflow needs to happen. We have a lot of state laws and rules from general administration, and in order to make sure everything is right and get things routed through the right departments and get the right approvals, it was starting to get very, very complicated. And PeopleSoft workflow is really like you build it from the scratch, and in order to build all of the requirements that we had into PeopleSoft workflow, it started to become a huge customization. And one thing you've probably heard us say over and over is we don't want to customize PeopleSoft. So we found ourselves in a place where we were having a very large customization. So we decided to go to a third-party vendor, something that's a bolt-on, so when PeopleSoft changes in the future, it'll kind of change with it, and it'll be much less maintenance going forward. So some of the advantages of going with Gideon Taylor Forms and Workflow is it will provide a step-by-step process. So in PeopleSoft, there's a lot of different screens and a lot of things you have to do, and Gideon Taylor will help simplify that somewhat in that you'll have to just know what form to go to, and then it'll walk you through and ask you for the fields that you need. So it'll give you that step-by-step process to help folks just answer the questions and get their action done. It only will present the fields that are relevant. So one of the things, we're going from a system where we had EPA in the EPA web system and SPA employees and HRIS, and now it's all going to be in one system. So you're going to have to know what you can do for an EPA employee and what you can do for an SPA employee, and make sure you're choosing the right options. And so with Gideon Taylor, we'll have some logic in it that we can kind of restrict it so that if you're doing an EPA hire, we'll only let you do certain things. And if you're doing an SPA hire, you'll have to have a position and a probationary date and things like that. It'll help you make sure that you're putting in the relevant fields for the type of action that you're doing. The other thing is it will allow you to put multiple actions, have multiple actions processed at the same time. This is pretty big for us because when we were working in PeopleSoft proper, if you were doing a certain action, like you were changing the position and then you wanted to give the employee maybe a pay rate change because they have more responsibilities now, you would have to go in and update the position, then you would have to go in and give the pay rate change, and you had different actions that you would have to initiate. Each of those actions would have to go through the whole approval cycle, and then you'd have to initiate the next part of the action, and that was going to be kind of problematic in that people were going to have to initiate all these actions and remember to do all the pieces before payroll. So with Gideon Taylor, there's a form, and you can do multiple actions on one form, and then it will just, after it goes through the approval cycle, it'll just send out the records and update PeopleSoft in whatever places it needs to be updated. So that will help streamline things. And the other thing is it offers an expanded work list capability. So you'll be able to go in and do things like filter and sort, and if there are a bunch of people in a department or a school division, dean's office maybe, that are in the approval cycle, you'll be able to go in and kind of sort and filter and look for the type of actions that you need to approve, rather than, just going in and seeing everything. So Gideon Taylor helps a little bit with the work list. So those are some real big advantages for Gideon Taylor. As we start working with them, we have, not only do we install their software, install their infrastructure, but they have a base suite of forms that they've used and have implemented in other universities. So we're not starting from scratch. We can just go to their library and say we want this form. And I listed the 3 major forms here. The hire, rehire form is when you hire someone in a university, or they may have left and you're hiring them back, or they're transferring to another unit, or you're giving them a secondary appointment. So that's one form that we're going to be using. The other form is for job changes, things that happen, job data is like the employee's job. So if you're changing the pay rate of the employee, or you're promoting or demoting them, or reclassifying them, all those kinds of things are job data changes, and that's another form. And then the third form is an employee status change, and that would be if they're terminating or going out on retirement or putting them on leave or something like that. So those are kind of the 3 big forms that Gideon Taylor has, and all of their forms are called Personnel Action Request Forms. So we call them EPARs. So that's some new terminology as well. So what I'm going to do first is just walk you through a standard form. This is just a Gideon Taylor form as it is. It's just an example. It's not configured to have UNC data in it or look like what it's going to look like in our world. But I just wanted to kind of walk you through the process so you have a feeling of how it's going to work. And then at the end, we'll show you one form that we're working on right now, developing for UNC. So the first form I'm going to walk you through is the status change form. And so what you'd first do is, for those of you who have been through campus working groups or demos before, you'll see this looks just like PeopleSoft, right? You go in, you want to find out, okay, I want to change the status of an employee. Let me find my employee. So you go to the search, and we're looking for the employee. Her name is Irma Krantz. So we're typing in her last name, Krantz, and we are selecting the employee, and then it pulls up the status change form. So in this case, we are terminating Irma for dishonesty. So you can see at the top of the form, we have a bunch of information about her current job, the name, the business unit, the department ID, her job code, whether she is a regular or temporary employee. She's a regular employee. Full-time employee. Her FTE is 1. So that's just kind of basic information about her. Now, as I said, this is just a sample Gideon Taylor form, so none of that really looks familiar to us. It's not UNC data in there. So then we look at now we're going to process the action. And effective October 30th, 2011, we went in and we terminated her, okay? And you can see that the action is termination, and the reason is dishonesty. So we also have the ability to upload attachments, just like in EPA Web. When you can upload attachments, we'll be able to do the same thing. So you can upload attachments, and then when you're done, at the bottom of the screen, you can input your comments, and then hit submit. So that was a termination for the reason of dishonesty, which we're not going to have that action reason here at UNC, by the way. So the next thing we're going to do is, let's say we were going to put Irma out on a leave of absence. So what I wanted to point out here is the current job information at the top of the screen stays the same. But when you get to the middle section where we put in the action and action reason, you'll notice that this time the action that we put in was a paid leave of absence. And this is what I was telling you, that Gideon Taylor is smart enough to kind of ask you for different fields depending on what you're doing. So once we input a paid leave of absence, it asked, and we said medical, then it asks us, okay, are you going to change the FTE? Or does the comp rate change? When is the first day of the leave? What's the expected return date of the leave? So those are all new in different fields. Those weren't there when we were terminating Irma for dishonesty. So the leave of absence You'll notice now the other thing on this form is that there is no file attachment here because we don't want people attaching medical files for medical documentation for Irma in her personnel record. So we took away the file attachment capability when we put her out on leave of absence. So then the last one is just, again, we're doing a termination, but this time the action reason is for death. And you'll notice that all the things for leave of absence are gone. We do have a last date worked, date of death. Again, now the file attachments is back if we want to attach a death certificate or something like that. So that's what happens in Gideon Taylor. So we're going to go through and process Irma's termination for dishonesty. And as you go through it, when you get to the bottom of the form and you hit submit, I want to talk a little bit about workflow and how you can see that in the system. So you'll notice here that Todd Pronoun was the person who was terminating Irma for dishonesty. And when we hit the submit button, you'll notice that the workflow visualizer is at the bottom right there. And you can see that Todd, there's a check mark saying that Todd had submitted this action. And now it's at the Gideon Taylor's department level approver. And so you can see exactly where in the process who's supposed to approve the action next. So right now it's waiting for the approver. And you can see after the first approver approves it at the department level, it'll go on to the compensation office, then the broader HR office. And then I wanted to mention a little bit about integration broker. So remember, we're in Gideon Taylor, right? Not in PeopleSoft yet. We're in Gideon Taylor system. And so all these approvals and everything are happening in Gideon Taylor. And after you get to the last approval step, then there's something called integration broker. And that's just the point that you take the data from Gideon Taylor and you move it into PeopleSoft. So that's when you actually apply it to the system. So you can tell when it's in the approval process. You can tell when it's being brought into PeopleSoft. And the very last phase, when that box has, when it says system and it has a box around it, you'll know that it's actually in PeopleSoft and it's gone through. So there are a couple times when it may get stuck at integration broker, and that might be before payroll runs. We may stop all actions, and so it may be sitting in integration broker for a while before we kind of let things flow through to PeopleSoft again. So that's a new term and a new concept, so I want to explain that a little bit as we walk through this. And you can see at the bottom there's a transaction log. So not only can you see the visualizer where the action is, but you can look at the log at the bottom and see what's happened, who's approved it, and when. So I want to talk just very briefly about our workflow strategy. In our workflow strategy, we basically have an originator, and then we have two levels of approver that are in the school and division. The first is the department level, and then after it goes to the department level approver, and there's an HR and budget approver there. Once it makes it through the department, then it will go up to the school division. In some of the smaller schools, they may not have two levels. Level 1 is optional. So in some of the really small schools, they may just do all the actions in the dean's office. So it would just go from the originator to level 2. But at any rate, you must have a level 2 approver. So there's got to be someone from the HR and budget approving the action. If it's a compensation-related action, then the budget person would approve it as well. But you must have all actions approved at the school division level. And then it comes on to level 3, which is central office. And central office could be one of a variety of offices. It could be HR, the provost office, academic personnel, or it could be finance, it could be the budget office, it could be OSR. So there's a variety of different approvers at level 3. Did want to also say that we do have an approver role in addition to the HR role, the budget approver role. We also have a student approver role for student actions. So we've seen how you create a form, you submit the form, it goes through workflow. Now I want to talk a little bit about approving the form. And in Gideon Taylor, they have a home page that you'll go to, and you can do different personnel actions. So they have a work list in their home page. They have a place to start a new personnel action request form. You can update a form. You can evaluate, which we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Or you can just view a form that's already gone through. So from this work page, I'm going to look at two different things. I'm going to look at the work list in a minute, and I'm also going to go down and show you how you can evaluate an e-personnel action request form. So from this home page, if you're an approver, you can go, first we'll just click on the My Work List. And here's an example of the work list. Maybe kind of hard to see, but I think you're all familiar with the concept that you'll have a work list. You'll see the individual who submitted the item. You'll see what item it was going through, what was the type of activity that's happening. It will link you to the personnel page that we just looked at before, the target page with the action on it, and then you'll be able to go in and mark it as worked or reassign it to somebody else or whatever. So that's the work list. That's one way to get to actions that are waiting for your approval. So if I wanted to, I would just click on that link for the KJ1004, and it would take me to the exact form that you all just saw, that we just walked you through for a termination of dishonesty. So let's go through the other route, which is evaluating EPAR. And this is kind of neat because it gives you the ability, when you get to this screen, to go in and search and find actions which meet some criteria. You may want to search for actions that you're approving that are SPA actions or EPA actions or a new hire kind of action. So there's different ways to get to actions that are waiting for you. Right now I'm going to do a search on partially approved actions, and I'll go in, and again, when you click on that, it brings up the form we've already reviewed. At the bottom, you'll see there's place to approve, deny, recycle around, or place it on hold. So I'm going to go ahead and approve it, and then you see again it goes through the workflow, and you can see that now we're at the page where we're at the place where the compensation group has approved it, and we're waiting for the broader HR office and their example to approve it. One thing I did want to note here, when you look at the visualizer, you see that there are actually times at the bottom. So you will actually be able to see how long it's been on someone's desk waiting. So you'll know whether someone's been sitting there for 3 days or a week, or where it's been in the process and how long it's been there. So it will help us facilitate the work a little bit easier. So once it makes it through that, remember we talked about going through Integration Broker, and then it actually writes it to the PeopleSoft tables. So here's the PeopleSoft table, and you can see for Irma, we can see that that Irma was terminated, and that's what we were trying to achieve. So now if you look in all the different tabs in PeopleSoft, you'll see that the appropriate information is there for Irma. So that's how we go through it and write it all the way to PeopleSoft. Now I want to do a quick brief demo on on the hire form, which is the form that we're working on at UNC. Before I go through and show you the hire form, I did want to just briefly mention that there are 7 forms that we're going to be configuring here, Gideon Taylor forms for UNC. One is the hire form, one is a job change form, a status form, which we just looked at. One is a person of interest, or that's putting in what we call an affiliate, PeopleSoft calls them person of interest. One is for updating the position, doing a lump sum payment, or what they call a funding swap. And later on, post-go live, we'll be configuring a form for the ARP process, and way later on, there's a potential that we could use Gideon Taylor forms for other things, other HR processes, maybe a personnel management form, personnel appraisal form, or maybe in some of the other modules, they could use a Gideon Taylor form as well. So I want to take just a brief moment and describe what they mean by the funding swap form, and here's the default standard form, and basically this form or something like it will be attached to every personnel action that affects compensation. So it's where you would go in and change the salary sources and say how the person's pay is affected. So now we're going to take a brief look at the hire, rehire, transfer form. And we've actually recorded this demo so that the developers are working in the system right now, and we didn't want anything they were doing to interfere with our demo. So we recorded it, and I'm going to go ahead and walk you through it right now. So in PeopleSoft, you would go to the main menu to get to the Gideon Taylor form. You would come down to the department self-service and click on that. Then you would go to that home page I showed you, the e-personnel action request form, and click on the home page. And now we're going to go ahead and start a new e-personnel action request form. We're going to choose the hire an employee. And then one thing that I wanted to just talk about very briefly as we go through the hire process is where person data is stored in the system. On every person that's in PeopleSoft, we have some basic information. We have information about their name, their birthday, their gender, their race, ethnicity, home address, that kind of stuff. That's person information. And that person information is all stored actually in Campus Solutions. So that is the system of record for person data. So every person gets stored in Campus Solutions, and then we flag what kind of relationship this person has with the university. Is it a student? Is it an employee? Is it an independent contractor, an affiliate, or POI in PeopleSoft lingo? So when you go to hire an employee, we have to actually get the person in the system, and then we'll go in and say what relationship they have. So who is going to enter that person data in the system? That's going to be done in most cases by a central OHR, and it will be done at the point when the background check is done. So when you go to hire somebody, you'll submit the background check form to OHR, just like we normally have done, and then the background check person is actually going to enter them into the system, in the Campus Solutions. You won't even be able to tell which system you're in, whether it's Campus Solutions or HR. And once that information gets put into Campus Solutions, the good thing about doing it at that stage early on in the process is that information will be there so that the PID will be generated, and then we can start getting things like the one card ready. We can get computer access ready. So all of that can be done before the person is even here, really, while they're still doing the background check, so you can make sure that the system's getting set up. When they start, then the computer system can be ready for them, and onboarding will be a lot less, we're hoping. So anyway, getting the person information in the system will be done by OHR for the most part. So when you go to hire an employee, what you're going to want to do is go out into the system and say, okay, is this person already out there? And we're going to hire John Brown. So I put in J for the first name, Brown for the last name. I do a search to see whether John Brown is already in the system. And you can see that we will find two people in the system by the last name of Brown. There's John Brown and Jane Brown. I did want to show right here that you can see in the system whether the person is a student, whether the person is known to HR, whether they have a job, which is the third column, and whether they have an active job. So we see that for both Jane and John Brown, they were a student at UNC. They had been in the HR system. Maybe they were a volunteer or something like that, because they never really had a job. So their information had come from Campus Solutions, was brought over to HR, so we know about them. They must have been an affiliate or a volunteer or something like that, but they didn't have a job. So we're going to go ahead and hire John. When we do that, the basic information that was entered by the background folks is already in there, their personal information. You can see right there, their name, address, that kind of thing. You scroll down, you see their business information. And then if you click on Next, we're going to go in and we're going to add the identity information. We're going to add citizenship. He is a citizen. This is the one place that you'll actually be able to see the full Social Security number. We don't put that in a lot of screens, but we do want to make sure at the time of hire we're really making sure this is the right person. We're going in and updating the ethnicity data. And then we'll save and go to Next. So this is my point now. We're in PeopleSoft. We're in the Campus Solutions area because we're doing the personal information. So when we save it, we're saving it over to Campus Solutions. Now we need to get that information from Campus Solutions and bring it over into HR because we're hiring the person. So at the point when you're now talking about the job and putting in the job information, you're now in HR. And so Campus Solutions will send the person data over to HR and will attach the HR job information. So in this case, we're hiring John as of July 1, 2013. You can see that John, we're putting him in the SPA job family. And the employee job group is an SPA perm. And once we choose SPA perm, remember I was telling you the options kind of change. For an SPA perm, we're able to put in a position number. We're required to put in a position number. And so we can go out and do that. We'll scroll down. And we're going to go ahead and put in the TIM administrator. So we'll search, find the person who is their TIM administrator. It happens to be Minnie Mouse. Then we're going to go in and put in the vacancy ID, which is the recruitment, from People Admin, your recruitment ID, that will go in. And then when you click on Next, we'll make it through the next step, and now we'll go in and put more information about the job itself. This person is in a severe weather essential, also subject to HIPAA. and we'll put in the UNC long title, which is really the working title, the one that will show up in the campus directory. The communication disease mandatory. This person is the secondary person in their department who's for communicable disease. Continue through. We'll put in the compensation rate of $55,000. Then again, I had mentioned that we'll have that funding SWOT form where you can go in and put all the sources in. We won't go through all of that right now. And then we'll finalize the form, put in some comments, new hire to our department. Then I'm going to click on the spell check, and oops, I noticed that I made an error there. So let me go ahead and fix that. I think you'll like having spell check on the comments. Then we'll click OK, and when we're done, you can submit. So that's how we would get through the entire form, and then it would go through workflow as we already talked about. So that is an example of the hire form. And with that, I'll ask if there's any questions. Yes?
Can you go to the next one?
Will there be any email notification through workflow? I know currently with EPA Web we don't receive emails when there's things in our inbox, so to speak. Will there be some?
Good question. Yes, there will be an email notification that will get sent to you. If you have something waiting for your approval, at the end of every day an email will go, and if you have 5 actions, it'll just be one summary email telling you of 5 actions waiting for your approval. Another question?
So in the visualizer, it clearly shows you where the action is, but will it also show who?
Yes.
Who it is?
Yes. You'll be able to know who that is. Any other questions? Yes, in the back. If you come to the microphone.
I want to ask a question about the approval roles and levels, and it looks like in level 1 and 2 approvals, which are department approvals, there were 3 different workflows. Are all 3 available at one time, or do you select one? Can you speak more about the approval at the department level?
Sure. So at the department level, there are 3 different roles that can be done. The HR approver, the budget approver, and if the department chooses to have a student approver, that's an optional role, there could be a student approver as well. And yes, it can go to all of those roles at the same time. And as soon as one of each of those approvers, the HR and the budget approves it, then it will move on to the next level. And with the student action, if you're requiring a student action, if you have chosen to have student action approvals, once you got that student action approval as well, if it's a student action, it will go to the second level. So yes, you can have multiple people approve them at the same time. When the requirements are all filled, then it will move up to the next level. Any other questions? All right, then I will turn it over to Rich. So, okay.
Good morning, everyone. Sound's coming out right? Okay. A screen here. So I'm Rich Arnold from the Office of Human Resources. I'm going to quickly show you a couple of things, learning management and some reporting stuff. So in learning management, I'm going to go through this. I'm going to show you how to request this to be for all employees. So this will be coming off the portal if you want to sign up for classes offered by OHR or other people that are servicing their classes through the OHR sign up. How to go in and be able to cancel that course yourself, and then be able to look at your own training summary. We have this set up so I can do it via PowerPoint, but I like taking chances. So I'm going to go in here and see if I can do this live. And if it doesn't work on live, then we'll come back to that. So we talked about, let me put in my password, if I can spell my name. It was mentioned earlier that we have a training environment, and I'm actually going to go into that training environment. Normally, when we normally sign on, you will use single sign-on. Since this is a test environment, I have to actually log into that as well. Now, we mentioned earlier there'll be a portal. The training type stuff would be the kind of thing that's out on the portal for all employees to be able to get to. Since I'm not in the portal right now, I've put it under my favorites. So one of the things I might want to do is go into request training enrollment. So this will be the screen you get when you click on that. There's a number of different ways to be able to search for the course you're trying to look for. Search by course name. You can have them know the number if you're looking for stuff by dates or by location. So I'm going to search by course name. I'm just going to, I could fill in, so if I know it's an HR course or some other particular piece of that, I could fill that in. I'm just going to hit search so that I can just see all the classes that are there. And so down the left side, you'll see the different classes that we've got set up. If you want to be able to see details on that, there's a little eye so you can go see what it is. Has the course number, and then if there are sessions available, it'll either tell you that there are sessions available, we've scheduled some, or this is a course that we offer, but we're not offering right now, so there's none available. So I will go into, it takes all types, and click on View Available Sessions. And when I click on that, I can see there's a session 03 that starts from 8/21/13. It takes 4 hours to take that class, and there are no open seats. But I'm kind of hopeful, so I'm going to click on it anyway, see the details, and I said, if this session is full, place me on the waiting list. So you can even request things, and they're going to, if somebody cancels out, you'll be automatically added to the course once that seat clears. So I'm going to click Continue. If I want to put in some comments, and then I'll click Submit, and then I'll get a save confirmation so that I'll actually know that I actually did something. It says that save was successful. Click OK, and it comes back and says your request was submitted. So that's how easy it will be to go through and pick a class and be able to go through it. So now if I down at the bottom, I can go look at my training summary, which we could also come to directly off the portal, or I can look at it here, and you'll be able to see that I'm enrolled in one class, EPA Recruitment and EEO Topics, and then the one I just did, which is Takes All Types, which is on the 21st, you'll see I'm sitting session wait listed. So I can come back in here and be able to tell whether or not I'm still on the wait list or not. Let's say that I figured out that I'm not going to actually be able to make this class. So I can actually go here and look at, let me back up. So if I know I'm not going to be able to make a class, I can go into Cancel Course Enrollment. It shows, again, this is self-service, so this is only for my own classes. I can go in, see that session, click Cancel, make sure that what you want to do, you want to cancel your enrollment in this. Do you want to continue? And I say yes. And then that's why you don't do live demos. You click quickly by that, and then so then it will be canceled out of that class. If there was somebody waitlisted on there, you'd be able to go right into that. So, any quick questions on learning management? And then I can take some more questions after too, because I'm going to go in because we're running just a little bit short of time. No questions on that? Okay. All right. So we'll go back to the desktop. I'm going to try to go back to the desktop. We're going to go into reporting. So there's a number of different things we're doing from a reporting standpoint. PeopleSoft has delivered reports that are in there. Most of the things you want to do, those are primarily like transactional reports. There are some audit reports. We're also going to be building some reports that are specific to UNC, so some of the ones that don't get delivered with the product. There'll be online inquiries so that you might not have to go into report, but you can just look at it online. And then you may have heard the term OBIEE, which is Oracle Business Intelligence Enterprise Edition, or the warehouse. That's the interface in the warehouse. And that's where a lot of reporting will be delivered there as well. So I'll show a little bit of that. So the first thing I'm going to go into, and again, I've done this the same way that Vicki did, where I've recorded this because it's in a test environment. This will be like the bread and butter reports. These are the transactional reports that are coming right off the PeopleSoft system. I just want to give you a little bit of an idea how that will look. So if I go into the main menu, And I go into Workforce Administration, which will be one of the areas that will be available. I go into Personal Information. I'm going to do a real simple report. This is going to be a birthday report. Go into Biographical Data. And then look down and have a birthday report. So I wanted to show this, just kind of show the methodology of how you get into it. So when I select that, I got it. This will be standard across all the delivered PeopleSoft type reports. So you'll get a screen that says, that you need to do is run control. Now, for those of you who use HRS in Power, one of the things in there is you click an icon and then you have to wait for the report to run. And you may run a while and you're hanging around for a little while and eventually it'll pop up. PeopleSoft does that a little differently. So they do a run control and it runs in a batch mode in the background, so your screen's not all tied up while you're doing that. So I'll select a run control and then I'll click run on the report. And then what is showing up here at the top is that there may be different places where that report can run. Normally that stuff will default right in and you can just go right ahead. I've got the employee's birthday report, so I click OK. That's the one I wanted to do. So when those get submitted into the batch or the offline mode, you can go into the process monitor to kind of see what's happening to that report. And so the one I just submitted is here at this top line, and you'll see that I'm sitting in the queue because this is a shared environment. So there may be a couple of people in front of you. There may be things going on. There is this will refresh, but then there's a refresh button. Please don't go in and just click refresh over and over and over and over and over, and over again because it's just like the elevator. It's not going to get it there any faster when you do that. So, but I'll click refresh once, and then I'll see now the status here under run status has changed to success. And the distribution status is posting because once the report's run, then there's multiple different ways of distribution. So I'll click refresh again one time, and now it will say it's posted. So now, okay, so I know my report is now finished. I want to go see what happened. So I click on the details there, and then this will go in and show me this particular report I kicked off and ran. The process, you can actually see that if you want to, if it's taking a long time, you can see how long it took. So I submitted it. It runs anytime after. You can actually schedule reports. So if you have some reports that you want to run during the night, you can go ahead and put those out there and tell it to run it later so you don't have to wait on those. And then when you come in the next day or on Monday, they'll be sitting there for you. So once it's finished, you click on the View Log Trace, and you go in. If it had a problem, you'll be able to see the error log here. This one didn't have a problem. I can see that it created a PDF for me and the size and when it finished. So I click on that. And then this is just a normal, standard-looking report. They will look different ways. Let me see if I can zoom this up a little bit for you so that it's able to see. And you'll see that it's just, by month. Doesn't actually have the birthday, the date, but it's just got the day of the month and some general information about the person, what department they're in, if you have, what's their title and all. So there'll be a lot of delivered reports that are in PeopleSoft that you'll use to run your business, to check your transactions going on all the time. This will be the way that those run. Any questions about delivered reports and how those might run? Okay. Hopefully everybody will be happy that they don't have to sit there and watch the screen for a long time, waiting for those crystal reports to come back for you. Okay, the other thing, I'm not going to show an inquiry, and I'm not going to show those, but I'm going to go to the OBIEE and just give you a brief run through of that. Okay, I'm doing better than Matt did. I'm getting that "you're okay" nod instead of the roll ahead kind of nod. So where did I want to use Chrome?
Okay, so go down along the bottom. You can just get Chrome. Yeah, keep going, keep going, keep going.
This one.
There you go.
Thank you. I don't know why this. Chrome, new tab, OBI Sandbox. Okay, now I'm logging on to OBIEE, also in a test environment. Again, this will also be single sign-on. If you're already signed on, you won't have to go through this process. Now, I'm in a development environment, so I popped up, and so I can see a lot of stuff going on here. But the thing that most campus users will see is they'll normally just kind of drop into a dashboard that will have some reports already on there. There may be ones that we've delivered from Central HR or ITS delivered. There may be some that are school-specific that have been built for the particular school, not for Go Live, but for later. So I'm going to open up just a generic dashboard. So this is what OBIEE type reporting will look like. It's very much analytical and over time type stuff. This is basically the replacement for the HR data warehouse. And if you've done reporting out of there, either through that front end or if you use some web focus, this is sitting over top of the new EPM, which is the data warehouse. This will be the data warehouse. The EPM will be refreshed more frequently than the current. So right now the warehouse updates every time there's a biweekly payroll and you get things in. Different elements in this warehouse will be updating much more frequently, whether it's overnight or weekly, to have fresher information. But then we'll also have static snapshots too, just like we do currently, because currently we have fiscal year and calendar year type snapshots. In this warehouse we'll probably even have like monthly snapshots so that you can actually do month-to-month type comparisons. The types of things that I'm going to show here is very graphical. This is an overview, headcount distribution. I'm using demo data because we're early on and we don't have the converted stuff in. But you can display the data, and it's very interactive. You can either see it graphically. When you skate over top of things, you can see the description of the pie widths that you're over, and then you can combine that below with actually the tabular data of what's being shown in the graphs. Up at the top, you'll see that this dashboard actually opens up multiple different tabs, so you don't have to keep going in and out. You can just bounce between different tabs for the different types of reporting that you might want to do. Across the top are ways that I might want to filter the data down, and when I change some of these filters, it will change everything, all the lower analysis below that. I'll scroll down. You can see that we can stack multiple types. You can have line graphs, and then within even a particular type graph, you can have a drop down to change how that particular graph is working without having to rerun a report. More line graphs. So coming across the top, I'll just show some more examples. These are delivered. One of the advantages of using the EPM is that we're going to get a fair number of delivered dashboards, so we're not starting from anything. But then there's a team in place that's going to be building additional analysis. We'll probably be building some. We've gone out and done a fairly extensive interview. We went through and talked to all the central business offices, and we talked to a lot of large schools. Then we're going to be doing a campus working group to continue to gather information about the types of things we need to add to this over time. This particular one shows a demographic, so one of the things that you might want to do is be able to see the distribution either within your department or school of the ages of people. This will also inherit the security from PeopleSoft, so if you have access to just one department, when you come in here you'll see that one department. If you have access to the entire school, the data will be the whole school, so it will correspond that same way. If you switch to, I just want to show how one of these works. If I switch that at the top, the graph repaints automatically with that. And again, so lots of pie charts. Let's go to something a little more interesting than pie charts. Turnover trend. So some other things that you can do within here is that we can do basically like stoplight type stuff. It turns things red if they cross a certain threshold and they're not good, and they're green. It makes it much more visual, so you can kind of see what's going on. So you can look over here and see turnover rates. So once a turnover rate crosses over a certain threshold, so as long as it's down in the 7s or the 30s or the 25s or whatever, those are okay. But once we get up to 92% or 98%, those turn red on you. So it's a real quick visual way of being able to see what's going on in the data. The other thing you can do too is if you're trying to do, instead of just straight over time kind of comparisons, but I want to see what happens within certain quarters, you can go in here. So you'll notice in here I've got Q4, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. But let's say I had a lot of years of data and I was really just trying to see what goes on in the fourth quarter every year. If I select that and then apply it, then this is an example of where that filter applies to everything below. So now I just see the Q4s. So if I had 6 or 8 years, I could see Q4s streaming down. It makes it much easier to find the data you're looking for. Also, if you had, if the particular element was had a lot of besides quarters, it wasn't just 4 values, but it was a long list of values, you can actually go in and do an advanced filter too, so where you could choose certain things and put them over or back. So I can remove that particular filter, say OK, hit apply, and my data comes back. The other thing too, this is very graphical, and we like graphical things, but if I come down to the determination of root cause, you'll see that that's a bar chart that shows what the different pieces are. But I may have some people say, well, graphs are really pretty, but I actually like to see what the data is behind there. I'm an Excel person, so I really like pivots. So you can actually click pivot, and it'll just show you what was actually behind that chart without having to go to do different stuff. So the data is actually all there for multiple types of presentation. It's showing you here the first 25 rows. You can load out the next 25 rows, or you can go ahead and do all the data. So the data is there for you behind. Let's go to workforce activity. This will be another one where it's already in that tabular format, so you can see it. I'm going to walk through quickly some of the different things that are already there. Top performer turnover. This one I just like to show a little bit because it just shows some of the future capability we might have, where you can actually have more textual data that shows up on the graph or feeds from other places. So those are just nice looking things. Click on the EEO compliance, and it's loading. And so we don't have our real ethnicity groups loaded here, so you get the other types of ethnicities. But you can come down and see, again, the different types of bar charts. But the thing I wanted to show here is that, say that you're able to do this, but you want to be able to send it to somebody who's not logging on to OBI. So you can always put these export, or we'll have exports on here. So if you click the export, couple of different ways. If you want it to look the way it looks here, you can just say PDF, and then keep, and then open that, and then that really quickly, just relatively quickly, kind of slowly, opens up into a PDF. So it goes ahead and puts it into a PDF format really quickly for you like that. And so you can just send it off, print it out, make a binder book if you're trying to do an executive binder book and give to somebody. You don't have to go create it in yet another way and do the extra work. For those folks who really like to continue to use Excel and stuff like that, you can also come down, you can export it directly to an Excel 23, or if you just want to go grab the data so you can pull it into something else, you can export it to a CSV format. And Excel will open up, and basically it's just rip the data out of that and gives it to you in a CSV format, and you can take that and put it in other places and how you want to operate with it. So you're not necessarily locked into just doing it there. Okay. Don't know that there's a tremendous amount of other things that I wanted to show here. These are just some more examples where you can. Some of these will present with the pullouts, so you can see the pieces. You can also, some of these will have live drill-in links. So if I click on a particular item, I'm not sure this is going to work in this environment, but I can drill into that particular item and get a little more detail just behind that one item. Okay, so keeping it moving along. I don't think I had a little bit I was going to show about how some of these are built, but I think I'll skip that and kind of just move right to if anybody has some questions about reporting, or even if you want to go back to the learning management. No questions? Okay. All right. Then I will see if I can get the PowerPoint back and then move it through the stuff I showed live. And I'll give it back to Matt. Thank you.
First, I want to thank each of the presenters. There's a lot of preparation that goes into this, and quite honestly, between the reporting, the workflow, and some of the other pieces, and you're seeing the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's thousands of hours in this. I will say to you that none of this is going to be perfect at go live. This is a very complicated project, and we're consolidating multiple legacy systems that have been around a long time. So, in terms of expectation setting, I'm sure there will be some bumps along the way. As we get into January, we're going to try our best to minimize those and mitigate them quickly. We're going to continue to try our best to share information with all of you through events like this, websites, email communications, newsletters, and so forth. And I have been asked again to mention the project website and the project email, and there is an email newsletter. But there's a lot of capabilities here, and I think over time, although it's going to take some time to acclimate to this and to get this working smoothly in our unique environment, and we are different from many other places, I think long term, I think there's going to be a lot of capability here that we don't presently have. We may like some things that we did in the past a little better, but on the net, between some of the workflow capabilities, between some of the reporting capabilities, and really Rich just scratched the surface of this, some of the interactive parts of the system, even the way you queue reports up, can schedule reports, and so forth. There's a lot of power here, and we're excited, looking forward to that, but still a lot of work ahead, and we've got a lot of dedicated folks who are really working hard to get this thing up and running in a way that we'll all feel good about. At this point, I think we can open. We have a few minutes, Kathy, because Kathy's the arbiter of the time clock. She's not waving at me wildly to shut it down. Are there any questions, whether it's about a particular part of today's presentation or generally about the project? I'm happy to address them. I'm also happy to release you, 10 minutes early if you like. But is there any questions? Someone, yes, sir, step up to the mic.
In the HR system, will it still use the same chart fields for actual pay, I guess is the question.
The chart fields in the HR system will mimic those they're driven from the finance system. And so the chart fields relate to, where the payroll and benefits expenditures will be, distributed to in the university's accounting general ledger. And the whole new chart field structure that's been designed, and is a significant redesign of the chart field structure, will be visible. You'll also have the ability to use what are called combo codes. And for those of you in the finance world, you'll understand what those mean. I haven't actually gotten to the point that I've grasped it yet. And I think maybe they're sparing to explain it to me because I don't get too deep into the finance stuff. But yes, that whole chart field structure will come in from the accounting, the finance side of ConnectCarolina. Good question. Any other questions today? Yes, go ahead.
So, Matt, what kind of support in future years are you expecting from Gideon Taylor, and how is that going to work with upgrades to PeopleSoft down the road?
So that's a great question. So he's asking about Gideon Taylor, which is the workflow solution. And we picked Gideon Taylor very carefully and specifically because Gideon Taylor and that whole framework is written in PeopleTools, which is the language that underlies PeopleSoft. They are an Oracle business partner. The entire framework is written in PeopleTools. It's not some proprietary language. And they have more experience in the higher ed arena than any of the other firms that we were able to identify. And the UMass system, and there are several other large sort of Tier 1 type of research universities that are on this platform. And they make a variety of products, actually, that work with PeopleSoft. So, I've worked in the technology world even before I worked in the HR world. There's no guarantees with any solution. Updates come, vendors come and go. But we feel very confident that of all the solutions out there, Gideon Taylor is well positioned to allow us to go through updates very seamlessly, as opposed to us having done major customizations to deliver workflow. And I actually don't think we could have even doing customizations delivered the capability that you saw in Gideon Taylor. It looks kind of simple. The complexity behind it is substantial. So I think we feel very good about that platform. Proof will be in the pudding. Ask me in March how we're feeling. We'll have another town hall, and I'll give you an updated answer. But best case at this point, we feel pretty good and confident about it. Good question. Other questions before we wrap up? Okay. Well, I want to thank all of you. I want to thank those folks who have joined us via the web, and we'll look forward to continuing to share information with you as the project moves forward. Have a good rest of the day.